Hello everyone, this is Crota giving you a shoutcast in game 1, in a best of 3 matchup. We have Mouse Mono spawning on here as the yellow Protoss player using Mouse Nova's account. Meanwhile, we have Fnatic MSI's TTI or TT1 spawning as the green Protoss player. This is going to be, once again, Protoss versus Protoss. This is a Protoss mirror match. The T from TT1 kind of confused me for just a moment. Anyways, this is Metalopolis, and it is going to be a it's going to be a cross spawn. And now remember, this is all part of patch 1.3.2, not 1.3.3, unfortunately, which most likely means that there will be a lot of Protoss foregating. So a lot of Protoss foregating in this best of 3 matchup. But then again, this will all be fixed. I talked to David Kim, and David Kim does say someone will be releasing why Thors are having energy once again in patch 1.3.3. Anyways, taking a look at the build so far, Mana having a slight lead on his probe production, and that should translate into a small advantage in the economy, and then perhaps a little bit better advantage overall in the later portion of the game. You can see Gateway already coming in. That was a 12 gateway, delaying that probe production for just a little while. Meanwhile, TT1 also doing the same thing, and apparently Mana doesn't know that you cannot actually, or TT1 doesn't know that you cannot actually do a close spawn here on this version of Metalopolis. This is the TSL version of Metalopolis. Hopefully he does learn this for the subsequent matchups later on, as this is only week 1 in a 4-week series. TT1 quickly coming in, sees that there is nothing over here. A probe now going to come up the ramp. And is this going to confuse TT1? Is TT1 actually going to try to scout out this location, or is he not going to change up his scouting pattern at all? Protoss mirror match, you can see the builds are nearly identical, but once again, Mana just a little bit ahead so far, as that probe now wandering around back and forth. We are getting that Cybernetics core, and there is also, once again, a slight advantage on the Cybernetics core, about a 7-second difference so far, which should also translate into a 7-second difference when researching that warp gate. You can see a probe already taking a lot of damage. I'm not quite sure why. They're finally microing away that probe just a little bit. The probes are giving chase and now backing off even further. Down over here, this probe got a lot of damage onto a pylon shields, but still nothing really to talk about. Now, the key question here is, will they be using the range of 7.5 on the power radius of a pylon in order to warp in units onto the high ground? That's one of the biggest changes in patch 1.3.3, as stalkers are now able to easily shoot down and destroy a pylon that is trying to warp in. Meanwhile, back over here, the Nexus is still training up more and more probes, so TT1 is not going to be doing... it does not look like he's doing a 4-gate. No, he may be doing a 4-gate. Now sitting on 22 probes and still training up more and more. We are getting a Stalker. We are getting that Warp Gate research and getting for an additional gateway. Meanwhile, back over here, we are blocking one of the assimilators there, and now additional gateways are coming in from Mana. We may get one more gateway to round out and get that 4-gate push in just a moment. If the timing is right, that means that around 6 minutes and 30 seconds, Mana will be able to charge up that ramp with a very, very large number of units, especially if the sentries are not there in time. With only one gas, it's going to be very difficult to get enough sentries, as a 3rd gate also coming in, and also a 4th gate coming in as well. So, Protoss mirror match, it's going to be a lot of 4-gating, it appears, but no, now Mana going for an additional assimilator and running off of 3 gateways instead. So, TT1 now opening up with that 4-gate build, and now also continuing the Chrono Boost. Not quite sure why he decided the Chrono Boost this last Cybernetics core there. You can see a wasted Chrono Boost, as these gateways are now upgrading into warp gates. I do not see a proxy pylon set up anywhere down on the far side of the map just quite yet, as the probe now making the trek out there already. We are going to be getting some units now warping in here. Easy Zealots already coming in, as a probe now is going to be able to scout out this one particular probe, which will be trying to warp in a pylon. A Stalker going to make sure that that does not happen, as we already have a decent number of Stalkers and sentries here. This is going to be very, very difficult to charge up the ramp. A very, very small choke point here, and then a single file line right there, as this probe now coming in and just going to find a very, very eager Stalker to come in and destroy it. Down goes that probe. There it is. And now we just have a bunch of Zealots, 4 gates, and now going into a robotics facility. So it is a 3-gate into a robotics facility, meanwhile a 4-gate into robotics facility, as both players are now getting a lot of gas. So it doesn't look like it is going to be any all-in 4-gate pressure, as the Stalkers, Zealots, and Sentries are now making their way out. The Sentries staying behind with a couple Zealot support in order to be able to force field that ramp. Stalkers realizing that most likely there was a probe there, quickly taking out that one unit and now pulling away. Oh, very nice that the Stalker army of Mana did not reveal himself to the Xel'Naga watchtower there, and now once again pulling back. We are currently getting some more Stalkers still walking around here, and this is a very Stalker-heavy army so far. Zealots are coming in, and now we also have an Observer. If TT1 gets Immortals, the Immortals will be able to fend off the attack much more easily. Meanwhile, the Robotics facility over here also training up an Observer, and both players are going to be setting up those Observers very early on. It appears that in this mirror match, no one wants to expand just quite yet. And as both players are harvesting a lot of gas, we'll see if we get the Robotics Bay. Yeah, TT already getting that Robotics Bay. Colossi going to be very, very helpful. That additional range, plus the ability to be able to stack up on top of Stalkers already really helps out, as we are also getting a Warp Prism coming in from Mana. So Mana getting a Warp Prism, and we'll see what's going to be happening there. Perhaps an elevator drop into the dark area right on this cliff, and then followed by warping in units. We are getting a Colossus now. That Colossus is being chrono boosted, will be trained up in 65 seconds unless a second chrono boost is also added in as well. You can see the Stalkers are coming and getting some damage, and oh, one Stalker on the high ground lost there. So the first point of damage really being dealt, as a probe for some reason not realizing that there are 7 Stalkers coming in to destroy it, able to easily take it down. We are getting that Warp Prism on the backside, and that's going to be a lot of Zealots, and this is going to be very brilliant play, I believe, as the Warp Prism will be able to drop into, perhaps right into here. If he actually tries to drop into the vents, that's actually going to be a little bit worse. No, dropping straight into the mineral line as the units are fighting back and forth. There is also one Colossus, and now in come to the Zealots. The Zealots now running straight into that mineral line. The probes trying to get away, able to do so. I believe some workers were killed in that engagement. Yeah, 7 workers lost, or 7 workers total lost so far, as Mana now backing off once more. That Warp Prism with full of cargo, able to come back in and harass even further. Taking a look at the Harvester count, TT1 sitting on 29 versus 31, not too much of a difference, but we already have Mana expanding to his natural expansion here. So the natural expansion already underway, going to get a very strong economy going, and this is going to transition very well. But in come the Zealots once more. The Warp Prism quickly getting destroyed. Probes need to come off the mineral line in order to lend a hand in this battle, as the Zealots are going to be able to get a lot of damage as well. Meanwhile, back over here, the majority of TT1's army coming in with that one Colossus, 2 Colossi now making their way out, should be able to get a lot of damage. And now Mana trying to get Blink. Blink going to help in trying to battle against that extended thermal lance range, or the range of 6 on those Colossi. As soon as the Stalkers are able to get within combat range, the Colossi have a very difficult time just because of the sheer numbers. We do have a Guardian Shield. Colossus now coming in. Here's the battle. One Guardian Shield is up. No force fields just quite yet to try to split any portion of that army. The Immortal was able to shoot down one of those Colossus and focus it down. And now the battle is continuing to rage on as TT1 trying to continue this pressure. Another Guardian Shield now coming up, reducing the damage on those Colossi by 4. As those Stalkers now continue to push in once again. The Stalkers are pulling back. But I believe the army of TT1 is just too heavy and too large at this stage in the game, as no force fields on the ramp. The Stalkers are going to go after a very low hit point Stalker there, as the reinforcements are coming in from behind. Observer up on the high ground, getting some damage there, as a new fresh Immortal, and more Immortals need to be trained. The Stalkers with Blink should be able to perhaps dance and micro their way from any additional damage, but that is going to be a very uphill battle for Mana to try to engage. He does have the advantage right now, since he is sitting inside his base, getting a lot of being able to just defend here, as that Warp Gate now taking more and more damage. You can see that Stalker now trying to engage, and now there you go, blinking those lower hit point Stalkers into the back, and just beautifully done by Mana, as both sides are battling it out. And there you go, blinking back and forth. The Immortal having a little bit of a problem there, as that Immortal only has a range of 5, but is able to get some damage very early on. And there you go, the Hardened Shield. Stalkers now trying to focus down that Colossus. Colossus doesn't have the extended thermal lance range, so is going to have a very difficult time now trying to pull back, and oh, accidentally shot his own Colossus. And there's a huge mistake by TT1. TT1 accidentally getting a round of attacks onto his own Colossus, and that must hurt a lot as the Stalkers are now battling it out. I believe TT1 will not be crying about that mistake, though, as it looks as though the probes are coming off the mineral line, and that is going to be it. There's the GG by Mana. So Mana losing game 1 in this best of 3 series. Stay tuned for game 2.